Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what is making the headlines with the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Sodha, and the Daily Telegraph's chief political correspondent, Christopher Hope. And both of you with us from now until just before midnight. So welcome to you. As ever then, let's turn our attention first of all to the front pages. And the Metro describing the testimony of Asylum over his experiences of racism as revealing poison at the heart of cricket. The game is in a crisis, reports the Yorkshire Post, as it leads with which players were named in the former cricketer's allegations at the MP's inquiry. The Guardian also has that story, but leads with sleaze allegations. It's revealed a Conservative Party donor who supported Michael Gove's Tory leadership bid had won £164 million in government contracts. To the Times now. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson faces a confrontation with his backbenchers as he pushes for MPs to be banned from taking on second jobs. Church of England's under fire for helping asylum seekers avoid deportation by helping convert hundreds of people to Christianity. That is the lead story for The Telegraph. More papers coming in all the time, but let's discuss those ones first. Sonia Sodha and Christopher Hope are here. And Sonia, I think it was the Telegraph right at the top there that called it Cricket's Day of Shame. But as we saw from the Yorkshire Post too, this was a really hard listen, wasn't it?
It was so hard to watch Asylum Rafiq's testimony as he talked about some of the really, really shocking, outright, vile racist abuse that he received while he was at Yorkshire Cricket. And I think the really important thing that came out of his testimony was, first of all, the personal impact that it's had on him. And it's really clear that he feels that he was not able to achieve his potential in the game because of the disgusting racist abuse that he faced. But I think the other thing that came out really strongly was that this was not just about one or two individuals engaging in this level of abuse. There was a culture of institutional complicity, and he talks about how some people who he thinks, are good people, but they just stood by and let it happen. And, some of the terms that he was called, the P word, elephant washers, it's just really, really disgraceful. And I think another reason why it's so shocking is we're not talking about something historic here. We're talking about something that happened really recently, and we're talking about a complete failure of Yorkshire Cricket in its initial response. So I think it's really, really shameful. I think there are such serious questions to be asked about cricket, both Yorkshire Cricket as a club, but also cricket more broadly. And, he was asked in his testimony, does he think that cricket is institutionally racist? And he said yes. And I think there are really, really serious questions to ask, not just about the individuals involved, but the institutional culture that permits this completely outrageous level of racist abuse with the terrible toxic impacts that it has on someone's life to sort of go on for so long.
Yes, and the Guardian leads on a different story, which we'll come to in a minute, but certainly pictures Asylum Rafiq looking very tearful and, describing how he was treated after losing a child, which was, devastating to listen to. But that question of people standing by, the accusation of how this was all handled is at the root of it too, isn't it?
Yes, it was. I mean, that headline there, I don't want my son to go near it, and his tears, and of course the feed was suspended while he's able to have a moment, frankly, after breaking down in tears. It's deeply moving, and I think it's an extraordinary wake-up call across the board for cricket. I've been to a lot of cricket last year. I didn't hear any racism in the crowd. It appeared to be inside these dressing rooms that we're seeing it, inside these cricket clubs, which is almost like the converse thing, maybe, of question marks about football, where you have issues with racism. So I don't know what is going on. Quite where the ECB has been on this, it seems they've been unable to act. They're a regulator. They can't do anything about it. They can't get involved. But equally, these clubs want advice and guidance on what to do. And Yorkshire just didn't know what to do. They were frozen by paralysis by what to do. And now we've got this brave guys giving evidence. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, and the whole issue of drinking too, you know, the idea that if you don't drink in a clubhouse, you know, you're not part of the clique. And, you know, we heard from Azim Rafiq that he had alcohol poured down his neck as a 15-year-old, the idea that you had to drink to fit in. These are all awkward,
As a
really
Muslim
awkward
man.
questions, aren't they? Sorry, Christopher.
Well, and made worse by the fact he's a Muslim man. So
Yeah.
we think it was teetotal, right? So it was not just being made to drink underage a lot of red wine, but it went to the heart of his faith, right? So it's completely offensive. That was not at Yorkshire, but at a cricket club he was at before Yorkshire, I think, from the evidence. But I mean, honestly, this is appalling. I mean, it's not the help. The game needs some help, some support. Boris Johnson in the Yorkshire Post, by the way, the Yorkshire Post there published dealing with it very straight and very fair, I think, and difficult for the county. But Boris Johnson telling the Yorkshire Post in tomorrow's paper they expect Yorkshire and the ECB to take immediate action following the brave testimony of Mr. Rafiq, and the entire country will back that.
Yes, indeed so. Metro 2, poison at the heart of cricket. The words that he said were used constantly, deeply offensive and you know, really old-fashioned for the UK, I think, Sonia, which is what you said. This is something that happened recently.
I know. Absolutely. And I think there's been a bit of complacency amongst some circles around racism in the UK, particularly if you look at, for example, the government commissioned Sewell review into anti-racism and racial inequality and racial injustice. Some of these things have been underpinned by this idea that actually outright racism in the UK is completely a thing of the past, and, you know, institutional racism just doesn't really exist, and it's people playing the victim and calling things out as racism which aren't actually racism. I think this serves as a really serious reminder. Now, no one would deny that attitudes have got a lot better in the UK over the last 40 or 50 years. And when you look at sort of long scale data, it really does show that. But what this story illustrates is that there is outright racism in some institutions in our society. It has infected cricket, a sport like cricket, and that these institutional cultures really do exist. So what I hope this story does is challenge this narrative that actually we solved racism, we've cracked it, and it's not a problem in the UK anymore, because it absolutely is.
No one's saying that, of course. I wonder whether cricket has a unique issue because it has people sitting around for long periods on the boundary, just chatting and talking, and it sort of fosters this kind of banter mentality when it just goes too far, completely too far. That was what appears to be the language used was so appalling, and it seems to have justified it. Maybe some people in Yorkshire, well, it just doesn't, does it? But I wonder whether the unique way that cricket has players sitting around for long periods, that may foster a kind of casualness about it, which has got to be tackled. But whether it goes further than that into other institutions, well, that's a different matter altogether.
Yes, well, we'll certainly keep an eye on what happens after those very harrowing allegations. In the meantime, let's move on to the Times. Tory MPs set to revolt over ban on second jobs. This was the U-turn from Mr Johnson today ahead of Labour's proposals on the very same matter about what to do about extra employment for MPs. Sonia, where are we?
So where we are is, so first of all, Labour came out today and said that they were going to put a motion to Parliament tomorrow, a binding motion that bans MPs engaging in political consultancy work. And this is work, you know, there's been such enhanced scrutiny of this as a result of this big row about Owen Paterson and this scandal about Owen Paterson, whereby Owen Paterson egregiously broke the rules on several occasions, essentially doing things in Parliament that were in the interests of companies that had paid him. So a very serious conflict of interest. This row has just ticked on because of the way that the government has handled it. If Parliament had sort of let the motion go through that, Owen Paterson had served a 30-day suspension, it just wouldn't have blown up in the way that it has. Now, because of the way the government handled it, it tried to get Owen Paterson off the hook, it U-turned. There's been a lot more scrutiny on the work that other MPs have been doing. And unsurprisingly, in many ways, given what we know, and I think it is a minority of MPs, but it is some MPs engaging in this, there are MPs that look like they're in very serious conflicts of interest. And I think this raises a real question. If you're an MP, why are you being paid by a private business to advise them on their political strategy? It's because you're an MP and because they hope that they will get some insider track on you. So Labour came forward and said they were going to ban political consultancy jobs. And it seems that Boris Johnson, I think it's a sign of just how serious the government feels this is, Boris Johnson has actually come out and said, no, we're going to do this. Now, there's some politicking over apparently the government's motion or amendment to Labour's motion is non-binding. So it sounds like Labour's motion is stronger. But this is going to create a huge divide in the Conservative Party now. You've got the Red Wall MPs, the 2019 intake, who are absolutely furious about the way that the government and Boris Johnson handled Owen Paterson. But you've also got some Tory MPs who I think feel quite entitled to take work where they're paid for political lobbying and strategising.
Well,
and I think that there's going to be a big backlash from them.
Christopher, just quickly, yes.
Tory MPs are furious about it. This is all MPs, not Tory MPs. The problem is a lot of Tory MPs do have other work. I think everyone accepts they shouldn't be lobbyists or pay political consultants. My worry for Tory MPs is the second point in Boris Johnson's letter to the Speaker today. He said that MPs who are prioritising outside interests over their constituents should be investigated. Now, that is an open season on every MP now for every journalist to go and challenge these people and say, what are you doing?
Okay.
Why are you doing this? Why that? And that's the problem he's uncorked for the Tory party, and mainly the Tory party. Less about lobbyists, more about what are you doing? Why are you not working for your voters now? He's uncorked a massive row that will play out for weeks, I think.
Yeah, indeed so. Yeah, we'll have more on that tomorrow. PMQs as well, and the liaison committee. It's busy enough for the Prime Minister without this too, is it not? Lots more still to come as well, including new details emerge concerning the suspect in the Liverpool taxi explosion. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Sonia Sodha and Christopher Hope. Welcome back to both of you. So to the Daily Telegraph, Christopher, this is in connection with, but not concerning, the Liverpool explosion and the suspect there. Could you just talk us through what this story is? The suggestion that there are questions over refugees changing their religion to avoid being deported.
Well, we know the suspect in this bombing was a Christian convert, but this is more of a general issue, looking at the issue of thousands of asylum seekers who have been welcomed to the Anglican faith in recent years. And the Telegraph is saying tonight that we have seen evidence that clergy even provided with written guidance on how to navigate the Home Office system. And so it's questions about whether it's a way of by converting asylum seekers towards Christian faith that has a bearing on any application to stay in this country, because it's not really clear in the case of this bomber. He had converted to the Christian faith, and where he was going with the bomb in the taxi, we don't know. We don't know enough about this really, but there's questions here about why this was a recent convert to the Christian faith would then want to do this. That's the question that they're not really sure about. So we're reporting tomorrow's Telegraph that Priti Patel is appalled at what's described as a merry-go-round of failed asylum seekers change religion and using other tactics to try and launch appeal after appeal. So if you can say you become a Christian, that may count in your favour when you go when you appeal your asylum application that was turned down. We're not sure where it's going, but it's a thought.
Yeah, sort of an interesting tangent, certainly. But the suspect in the Liverpool case, Ahmed Al-Swelmeen, certainly stayed with a Christian couple for some 8 months, and they were convinced that he did convert to Christianity, which is presumably why the police are being very cautious about a motive in this incident, Sonia.
Absolutely. And I think just to sort of pull it back to the wider story, I think I'm quite sceptical of the Home Office and Priti Patel's claims in this story, actually. We know that Priti Patel has sort of picked a bit of a culture war with asylum seekers. And, we know she's got an agenda against the legal profession as well. She's attacked the legal profession for even just representing asylum seekers, which is really kind of extremely undermining of our legal system. And I think it's important to say here that the church has issued a very strong denial at the end of this story, where it says that there's no evidence that they've not got any evidence that this is going on. So I think it is important, given that we know the government has an agenda, and the Home Office and Priti Patel in particular have an agenda around asylum seekers and looking to tarnish asylum seekers and give the impression that a lot of asylum seekers are here on sort of what they would term bogus claims. I think we need to be a bit careful about these claims coming from the Home Office and look at other evidence.
Very quickly, you've got Christopher. Do you mind if I've got about 30 seconds left. The catchily entitled "Integrated Rail Plan" is being published later on this week. Fury, the Metro, tells us about the 2 lines, HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Yes, I mean, it's out on Thursday, so we haven't got long to wait. It's been brief since Sunday, and that hasn't really helped the mood amongst Northern MPs, who are furious about the way the HS2 link towards Leeds and the east of England has been cut up. The concern they've got is how does it possibly get anywhere near levelling up? There's a full cabinet last week on levelling up. The levelling up white paper is coming out before Christmas, and this appears to go to the heart of the problem. If you're not going to build decent rail links, what is levelling up all about?